What's up, guys? Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, here to educate you on health, fitness, social well-being. Today, guys, I'm going to be releasing my free full-body program for intermediate lifters. This is going to be following up my free full-body program that's for beginner lifters. And what's going to be cool about this, guys, is you guys are going to notice as we go through this full breakdown explanation that this program kind of builds off the beginner program. So it's cool. So for those of you who are like, you're intermediate lifters already, you can go ahead and get started with this right away. But for those of you who are beginners, after you've kind of milked the linear progression on the full body beginner program, you can come right to this video and transition into the intermediate program. Now, a couple of things that I want to explain before we get into this, just so you guys already know, is that I wrote this program in a very specific way. And unlike the beginner program where you can have a little bit more freedom with maybe switching certain movements out, this program is designed to be ran the way that it is written. I will be going over a few of the exceptions that you can make in the video itself. So aside from that, there aren't any changes that I would want you guys to make to this. So if you guys ask me, hey, can I replace this with this, or can I do this instead? My answer is simply going to be no. It doesn't mean that you can't do that. You can do whatever you want. But in terms of, hey, if I want to run your program the way that you wrote it out, the way that you designed, can I change this or that? My answer is simply going to be no. Like I said, I'll be going over the few exceptions in the video itself. But let's pretty much get right into it. Just like in the beginner full body program, guys, I'm just going to give you the full breakdown explanation of every single day. The first things that you guys need to know is that this is going to be a 12-week program. So it's a Microcycle of 3 months, and it's broken down into 3 4-week blocks or 3 Mesocycles. And this is something that you can run repeatedly if you so choose, because pretty much what you'll do is by the time you get to the end of it, your singles or your approximate maxes will be higher than what they were when you started. So then you'll just take those in and you'll put them into the percentage-based work for your program and run it again. So with that being said, for this program, you do need to know your max, or at least have an idea of where you think your max is. You need to be able to do weighted pull-ups or chin-ups, whichever you prefer. And it is going to be this is a DUP wave loading style program. So daily undulated periodization, which just means you're utilizing different rep ranges based upon the day, and wave loading in the sense of it's not so much like, there's no deloading, but it's like, you build up for 4 weeks during a block, and then you transition into the next block where things get scaled back a little bit, and then you build up again. So those of you with the channel long enough kind of already know kind of like how I program and the way that my own programming is being done for me as far as like the wave loading and the DUP and stuff like that. You've seen videos on that. If not, you guys can check those out. But yeah, in the description down below, I will have the free full body beginner program video breakdown for those of you who want to check it out. And I'm also going to have in the description down below my video over how to distinguish between if you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced lifters. A lot of you are asking questions about that in the beginner program video. There's a lot more to it than just, oh, well, my bench squat and deadlift is this, or oh, I've been lifting for this many years. So for those of you who aren't quite sure, hey, should I run this program, beginner program, definitely check that video out and it'll give you all the clarity that you need. But let's dive right into it, guys. So getting started, Mesocycle 1, so block 1 of week 1. And what I'm pretty much going to do, guys, is I'm going to take you through like, what a full week looks like for the block, and then like how it progresses each week. And then with the next block, since the blocks are all kind of like similar, I'll just be explaining like what the differences are and what all you'll be doing. So just bear with me as we kind of go through this. It may be a little bit more it's a little bit more in depth to this than what it was with the beginner program, because that's more simple, straightforward. So Mesocycle 1, week 1 of day 1, you have your primary barbell squat. You have a top set of 3 at RP6. RP, so that's another thing I meant to mention, guys. This is an RP-based program. So rate of perceived exertion. So top set of 3 at RP6. That simply means you're going to build up and work up to a top set of 3 where you feel like you still have 4 reps left in the tank. For those of you who aren't sure about RP or how that works, you can definitely check my videos out over that as well, where I break it down. And then you're going to have 3 back down sets of 5 with 70% of your 1 rep max. Now, when I say your primary barbell squat, that simply means if you're somebody where you like low bar squat is your main squat, that's what you're going to be doing on that day. If you're somebody where you're a high bar squatter and high bar is your main variation squat, then that's what you're going to be doing. The only thing that you can't really do for this program anyway as your primary barbell squat is the front squat. You can use that on your variation day, which we'll get to, but you want to either be doing high bar or low bar for your primary barbell squat. After that, you're going to have bench press for a top set of 3 at RP6, just like with the squats. And then you're gonna have 4 back down sets of 5 with 70% of your 1 rep max. Then after that, you guys have pin lay rows for a top set of 5 at RP6. Then you have 3 back down sets of 5 with 90% of your top set. So basically whatever you end up doing for your top set of 5 at RP6, you're gonna take 90% of that and do that for 3 back down sets of 5. The reason I have the pin lay row set up that way is because I'm aware that most of you probably don't know what your 1 rep max is on your pin lay row, and that's okay. So this is how I chose to run with it instead. Then after that, you guys have weighted dips for 3 sets of 8, lat pull downs for 3 sets of 12, tricep cable press downs for 3 sets of 12, barbell curls for 3 sets of 12, and dumbbell lateral raises for 3 sets of 15. So what you guys are going to notice is that your primary movements for each day are going to be the first 3 movements of each day. You have like a primary leg movement, that's going to be your barbell squat on day 1. You have the bench press, which is your primary press movement or your primary chest movement, and then you have pin lay rows, which is your primary back movement. These are the 3 movements, and you're going to notice this trend with each day. These are 3 movements that you're mainly going to be focusing your progression on. It's not to say that you don't want to be progressing on the secondary compound movements like the weighted dips, the lat pull downs, or the isolation work or the tricep cable press downs, but you'll notice there isn't any set percentages for those, and there's no RP set for those. So the way that you're going to go about your secondary compound movements and your isolation movements is very similar to what you guys would do with the beginner program, where you're simply going to start with the weight that you know you can hit for prescribed sets and reps, and every time you get all sets and reps in proper form, you increase the weight next time. So for example, weighted dips, let's say you start your weighted dips 3 sets of 8 with 45 pounds. If you get all 3 sets of 8 with 45 pounds, the next time you come and do weighted dips, you can go to 50 pounds. You get all 3 sets of 8 with 50 pounds, you can go to 55 pounds. Let's say you get to 55 pounds and you don't get all 3 sets of 8. Let's say you get 8, 7, 6. You stick with that weight until you can build up to all 3 sets of 8, and then you progress forward. And keep in mind, if you're not progressing on the weighted dips, the lat pull downs, basically like the secondary compound movements or even the isolation movements, as quickly as you are the main movements, that's okay, because it's all about that total workload that you're getting done. So long as you're still progressively overloading, gradually getting stronger on the main primary compounds, you're still going to get stronger. You're still going to build more muscle mass because your total workload is still increasing, even if your lifts stay the same weight on those secondary lifts for like say a week or 2. So long as you're progressing on the main ones, you're still doing more total work. And now that's not to say that you shouldn't be progressing on them. You should, but it's okay if with the primary movements, you guys are going to notice it's set up for you to be increasing on those every single week. Whereas with the accessory movements, because your accessories can be your secondary compounds or your isolation movements, those are more so going to be like you progress on those as you can within the programming. Now, with that being said, here's one of the exceptions that you guys can make. For the weighted dips for 3 sets of 8 on day 1, you can replace those with flat dumbbell press. Reason being is that I'm aware that certain people, even with proper form, that's one thing, make sure you're doing it with proper form. If you're feeling pains or aches because you're not doing weighted dips with proper form, that's different. I'll actually have in the description down below my video over how to properly do weighted dips. You guys can check that out if you want. But for some people, simply due to the way that they are structured anatomically, they are not going to be able to do weighted dips because it's going to cause them pain in their sternum or their rib cage, no matter how good their form is. So for those of you where that's you, then you can replace the weighted dips with the flat dumbbell press for 3 sets of 8 for your secondary accessory chest movement on that day. But that's what day 1 looks like. Now, day 2, you guys have deadlifts for a top set of 3 at RPE 6. Then you have 2 back down sets of 5 with 70% of your 1 rep max. Then you have overhead press for a top set of 3 at RP 6. Then 3 by 5 back down sets with 70% of your 1 rep max. So you guys notice like the trend of kind of what the movement patterns are, the primary movement patterns are, like I said, builds off of that beginner program. So whereas day 1 focuses like more like on the bench and the squat, and then you had your barbell row, and now it's transitioned to like still the bench, the squat, and then the pin lay row. Day 2 on the beginner program, you had your deadlifts and your overhead press. Well, now on this intermediate program, you still have your deadlifts, your overhead press. But instead of having a lat pull down on the second day, your main back movement on this day is going to be weighted pull up. So it's written out as primary weighted pull up, top set of 5 at RP 6, then 3 back down sets of 5 with 90% of your top sets. So it's similar to how you go about the pin lay row. You're going to work up to a top set of 5 at RP 6, so a top set of 5 where you feel like you have 4 reps up in the tank. Then you're going to take 90% of that and do that for your 3 back down sets of 5. Now, here's another exception that you can make. For those of you where maybe like you just now got started with the weighted pull-ups, so maybe you're only doing weighted pull-ups with 5 pounds, so you can't taking 90% of that would kind of be difficult for you. All you're simply going to do, for those of you where your weighted pull-up isn't at least at maybe 25 or even 15 pounds, something like that, you're simply going to do 4 sets of 5 with weighted pull-ups with the weight that you know you can hit for 4 sets of 5, and then you're just going to build it up kind of the same way that I just described your other accessory movements, even though this is your primary back movement for that day. But ideally, what you want to be able to do is work up to a top set of 5 with the weight that you can hit for RP6, and then 3 back down sets of 5 with 90% of that for your top set. Now, your secondary compound movements, so going to your accessory work for this day, is going to be dumbbell Bulgarian split squats for 3 sets of 8 each leg, incline dumbbell press for 3 sets of 8, dumbbell seal rows for 3 sets of 12, lying hamstring curls for 3 sets of 12, and row cable face pulls with external rotation for 3 sets of 15. Now, one more exception for those of you who are maybe not able to set up dumbbell seal rows at your gym for whatever reason, then you can pick any other chest supported row of choice. So it can be an incline dumbbell row, it can be a hammer strength row where your chest is supported, but you want it to be a chest supported row. So not like the seated cable row, not a bent over barbell row. You want it to be a row where your chest is actually supported by some type of bench. So that way you can properly just focus on the protraction retraction without any cheating momentum or anything like that, because that's gonna be like your secondary back movement for that day. But that is what day 2 looks like. Then, and one more thing, the reason it says primary weighted pull-up, that simply means if you're someone where you're focused on the pull-up right now, and that's your primary vertical pull movement, then you're gonna go with that for day 2. If you're instead focused on the chin-up, then that's what you're gonna go with for day 2. So when it says primary weighted pull-up, it just means if you want to do weighted pull-ups, do pull-ups. If you want to do weighted chin-ups, do weighted chin-ups. If you want to do weighted pull-ups with the neutral grip instead of the overhand, you can do that. Whatever your primary weighted pull is, that's what you're gonna go with. Now, day 3, this is going to be your higher volume based day. So once again, building off of kind of like how it was with that beginner program, you have variation barbell squat for a top set of 8 at RP 6, then 2 back down sets of 10 with 90% of whatever you did for your top set of 8 at RP 6. Now when I say variation barbell squat, that simply means if you are doing the low bar squat on day 1 as your primary squat, then on day 3 you can choose to either do high bar squats or front squats for your variation barbell squat. But whatever you pick, that is what you're gonna stick with for the entire program. So for all 3 blocks on this, for every mesocycle on the Microcycle, for all 3 blocks, you're gonna pick that. So if you go with, if you're doing low bar squat on your primary day, you're sticking with that for the entire program. If you go with front squats for your variation barbell day on day 3, you're sticking with that. If you go with high bar for your variation because you're doing low bar on day 1, then you can go with that. Now, if you're doing, here's the only thing, if you're doing low bar on day 1, then your options are the high bar or the front squat for day 3. Those are going to be your options. However, if you're doing high bar for day 1, then your only option is going to be front squats for day 3. Because I said, for the mere fact that I don't want you guys doing like high bar on the day 1 and then low bar on the day 3. Once again, if you technically want to do that, you can, but simply biomechanically speaking, you're gonna be able to lift more weight if you go with the low bar anyway, so it makes more sense to kind of use that for your heavier work. So yeah, if high bar is your primary on day 1, then front squats will be your variation on day 3. If low bar is your primary on day 1, then you can go with front squats or high bar squats, depending on which variation you want to focus on for the entire program for day 3. So variation barbell squat, top set of 8 at RP 6 for 2 back down sets of 10 with 90% of your top set. Then you're gonna have close grip bench press. So all you're gonna do is whatever your normal grip is for bench press, you're gonna bring that in anywhere from 2 to 3 fingers, and you're gonna do that for your top set of 8 at RP 6. And then you're gonna have 2 back down sets of 10 with 90% of your top set, just like with the variation barbell squat. And then you're gonna have your variation weighted pull-up for your top set of 8 at RP 6 with 2 back down sets of 10 with 90% of whatever you hit for your top set. So when I say variation pull-up, it simply means if you did weighted pull-ups on day 2 for your primary weighted pull-up, then you're gonna do chin-ups for day 3 for your variation. If you do chin-ups on day 2, then you're gonna go do weighted pull-ups for day 3 as your variation. And then your secondary movements for that day, guys, you're gonna have Romanian deadlifts for 3 sets of 10, dumbbell shoulder press for 3 sets of 12, seated cable rows for 3 sets of 15, tricep cable overhead extensions, superset with dumbbell hammer curls for 3 sets of 15. Each movement, so you're gonna have tricep overhead cable extensions. You're gonna do that for 15. You're gonna be, sorry about that, guys. Camera cut out really quick. Had to delete some stuff off the camera to make space. But yeah, you're gonna superset tricep cable overhead extensions with dumbbell hammer curls for 3 sets of 15. Each exercise will be 15 on the overhead extensions, 15 on dumbbell hammer curls, rest, and then do 2 more sets of the superset. And then you have dumbbell or cable rear delt flies for 3 sets of 20. And so with this, once again, something you can have a little bit of leeway with. If you want to do, like the bent over dumbbell rear delt flies for 3 sets of 20, you can do that. If you want to do incline dumbbell rear delt flies for 3 sets of 20, you can do that. If you want to do cable rear delt flies for 3 sets of 20, you can do that. If you even want to do the pec deck machines that you can use do in reverse for rear delt flies for 3 sets of 20, you can also do that. I'm not very picky or particular with that. Now, the one more thing I want to mention is that in the same way that if you're somebody where you can't even do weighted pull-ups with maybe 15 pounds yet or whatever, And so instead of doing like, the top set on the weighted pulls and the percentage back down work on day 2, you'll do the same thing with day 3. So for your variation weighted pull up, instead of doing like a top set of 8 RP6 and then 2 back down sets of 10 when after the top set, you're just gonna do 3 sets of 10. But once again, that's just if you're not at a heavy enough weighted pull up to where you can do the top set based work and then the percentage based work. So that's what you're gonna do as far as that. So that's pretty much, guys, what the general setup looks like for like the programming. That is like what the program looks like. Now, what you're going to notice as far as like the way that everything increases is that with each week, your top sets are going to go up by an RPE and your back down sets are going to go up by 2%. So for example, if we look at week 2, day 1 for your primary barbell squat, you have a top set of 3, but this time instead of a top set of 3 at RP6, you have a top set of 3 at RP7. So instead of working up to a top set of 3 where you feel like you have 4 reps in the tank, you're going to work up to a top set of 3 where you feel like you have 3 reps left in the tank. And then your back down sets are going to be 3 sets of 5 with 72% of your 1 rep max. And it's going to be the same thing for the bench press, top set of 3 at RP7, 4 back down sets of 5 with 72% of your 1 rep max. For the pin lay row, the difference is going to be just the top set. So instead of it being a top set of 5 at RP6, it's going to be a top set of 5 at RP7, and then it's still going to be 3 back down sets of 5 with 90% of your top set. But if your top set of if your top set of 5 at RP7 is heavier than your top set of 5 at RP6 from week 1, which it should be, then 90% of your top set is going to be heavier as well. So your back down work is going to be a little bit heavier as well. And then from there, you still have your secondary work like the weighted dips, the lat pull downs, the tricep cable press downs, the barbell curls and dumbbell lateral raises. Once again, you just pick up where you left off with those and keep increasing in the way that I described. When you complete all sets and reps, you add a little bit of weight whenever you're able to. Now, the one thing I will say is that the good thing about this is, let's say that you're still getting used to RPE, or maybe like you just aren't feeling as good that day, maybe you didn't get a lot of good sleep the night before, so your top set of 3 at RP7 ends up being the same weight that you did for your top set of 3 at RP6, because that feels true to the RP. It's like, let's say, oh, okay, I did 250 pounds for my top set of 3 at RP6 last week, and it felt true to RP6 by a little bit, but I came in, didn't sleep well last night on week 2, so my top set of 3 at RP7 ended up being the same weight, and it felt true to RP, I only have 3 reps left. It's okay, because your back down sets are going up by 2%, so you're still ensuring that progressive overload from week to week. Now, you don't really want to make that mistake with something like the pin lay rows or even the weighted pull-ups, because like I said, your back down sets are based upon your top set. So you want that top set at RP7 to be heavier than what it was for last week for RP6 in order to ensure that your back down work goes up as well. But once again, just be true to the RPE and then follow the rest of the guidelines based upon the percentage weight, of course. And then for day 2, it's the same thing. Your deadlift, you have a top set of 3, this time at RP7, 2 back downs to 5 with 72% of your 1 rep max. For overhead press, top set of 3 at RP7, 3 back downs to 5 with 72% of your 1 rep max. The primary weighted pull up is going to be ran the same way as the pin lay row. This time instead of a top set of 5 at RP6, top set of 5 at RP7 once again, then 3 back downs to 5 with 90% of that, then your accessory work. Now with the volume-based work, it's the way that it's incrementing is going to be similar to the weighted pull-ups and the pin lay row. So this time, the top set stays the same, still top set of 8, but it's at RP7. So therefore your 2 back down sets of 10 with 90% of your top set are going to be heavier than what they were the week before, because your top set should be heavier. So that's the way that that works as far as like the increases from week to week. So you're going to start off like with week 1, RP6s, back down sets at 70%, and by the time you get to week 4, you're going to be doing like your top sets with RP9s, and your back down sets are going to get to 76%. You start with 70%, 72, 74, and then 76 for week 4. So that's the way that works. And then after that, you're going to go into Mesocycle 2. So we're going to go into block 2. So I'm pretty much going to be explaining like what the changes are from block to block, so that you guys kind of know like how this whole thing is ran, right? So what we have is, for example, for Mesocycle 2 on week 1, day 1, for your primary barbell squat, instead of working up to a top set of 3 at RP6, this time we're going to work up to a top set at 2 at RP6. You're going to be able to push the intensity a little bit more, because obviously whatever you did for your top set of 3 at RP6, you should be able to do a little bit more weight than that for your top set of 2 at RP6, because you're doing less reps, so you should be able to push more more weight on the bar. And then your back down sets, and this is where the wave loading thing comes in, right? Because like I said, you finished off at 76% of your 1 rep max by week 4 of block 1, so now we're kind of like, riding that wave. The wave went up, now the wave's going down a little bit. We're gonna scale things back a little bit, but we're gonna scale it back. When we scale it back, we're gonna be starting heavier than what we did beforehand, because for your back down sets, you have 3 back down sets of 5 with 72% of your 1 rep max. So whereas on the last block you started at 70% of your 1 rep max, this time around you're starting at 72% of your 1 rep max. So by the time you get to week 4, you're gonna be doing back down sets with 78% of your 1 rep max. And like I said, I'll have, like this different before, that video description down below that kind of go over different factors that I don't want to go into too in-depthly in this video, so it's not much longer than what it needs to be. But one of those videos will be going over, like, volume, like, your max recoverable volume, minimum effective volume, max additive volume, how volume is kind of like a debt that you're paying over time. Like, like you're gonna save some money, then you're gonna withdraw, but every time you withdraw, you want to have a little bit more money in the bank than what you did before. Different analogies like that, that I used to kind of break it all down. But that's the way that's going to be working. Now, what some of you may be wondering is that if you kind of seen like how I'm programmed and stuff like that, is why the back down sets aren't going down by rep as well. Because the top sets went down from 3 to 2. So some of you may expect that the back down sets go from 3 sets of 5 to 3 sets of 4 for day 1 and 2. Or on day 3, your top sets of 8 are now going to be top sets of 7. So instead of a top set of 8 RP6 and 2 back down sets of 10, it's a top set of 7 RP6 and then 2 back down sets of 10 with 90% of the top sets. So some of you maybe thought, well, maybe that would go down to 2 sets of 9. And what I'm giving you guys the option to is that you guys have the option to do that if you're not able to adequately recover from the workload. The reason that I'm not doing that is because that's something that we'll do more with powerlifting focused specific training, because we're trying to gradually keep the fitness getting higher and higher, so let them push more workload, but we're trying to manage that fatigue, right? Manage that volume. So we're kind of going to gradually decrease and taper the volume as we get really closer to the meet anyway, so where we're not doing quite as much high rep stuff. But in this case, especially if you're a brand new intermediate lifter coming fresh off beginner training, your lifts shouldn't be so heavy, aren't going to be usually that heavy, or you're not going to be so strong to where doing 3 back down sets of 5 for your back down sets on your day 1 and 2, or back down sets of 10 on day 3 for all 3 blocks should wreck you. You should be able to recover from that just fine. And keep in mind, technically speaking, for example, going back to the day 1 where you have 3 back down sets of 5 with 72% of your max. Well, that's something you've already done. You did that for week 2 on the block 1. The only difference is this time, this is where you're starting. You're going to finish up a little bit later. And the reason we want to do this, because like I said, I'm trying to keep that workload high. This isn't a powerlifting specific program. It's a intermediate, general strength training program to help you get stronger, help you get bigger as well. So the mindset is we want to keep that workload as high as what we can manage. So if you're only going to do that, you're only the same way the top sets decrease. So for block 2, you only go to back down sets of 4 instead of 5 on day 1 and 2, and then back down sets of 9 instead of 10 for your primary movements on day 3. If you find that within a week or 2 of the block that you just feel like you aren't adequately recovering, and that will decrease the workload a little bit, simply for the mere fact that 3 sets of 4 with 72% of my max, for example, is less total workload than 3 sets of 5 with 70% of my max. So that's why we're that's why I'm kind of keeping the back down sets consistent throughout the entire block, but you can make those adjustments as needed. So long story short, you want to run it as it is, but if you need to, you do your back down sets of 5 on day 1 and 2, and then your back down sets of 10 on day 3 for block 1, then that can go to back down sets of 4 on block 2, and then back down sets of 9 for the volume day, then back down sets of 3 on block 3, and then back down sets of say 8 on the volume day if you feel like you need to make those adjustments. But ideally you want to be able to run it the way that it's laid out, and that shouldn't be an issue for any of you guys. So that's what you're going to be doing, right? So your tops is pretty much decreased by reps. You can push intensity a little bit more. Back down sets stay consistent though, so everything still ran the same way. So your 2 back down sets of 10 on the volume day, for example, with 90% of your top set, that's how you're going to keep to that. The only difference is, since you're doing a top set of 7 RP6 instead of top set of 8, once again, your top set of 7 RP6 should be a little bit heavier than your top set of 8. And then with the accessory work, once again, we're not scaling those back at all. You just continue to push those the same way you have been. So, if you left off, let's say with the weighted dips, 3 sets of 8 with 60 pounds for week 4 of block 1, then when you come in with week 1 of block 2, you just pick back up with that. So if you did 3 sets of 8 with 60 pounds the week before, then this time you go for 3 sets of 8 with 65 pounds on those secondary movements. So you're still just trying to gradually add to those as you go. Now, going into the final block, which is going to be Mesocycle 3, which is this time around what you're going to be doing. Using day 1 again as an example, you have primary barbell squats. You have a top set of 1 at RPE 6, then 3 back down sets of 5 with this time 74% of your RMA max. So block 1 we started at 70% and we ended at 76%. Block 2 you start at 72%, you're going to end at 78%. So this time with block 3 you're going to start at 74% of your RMA max, and you're going to end off with week 4 doing your back down sets of 5 with 80% of your 1 rep max. So primary barbell squats, top set of 1 RP6, 3 back down sets of 5 with 74%. bench press, top set of 1 at RP6, 4 back down sets of 5 with 74% warrior max. And then with the pin lay rows, that's something else I wanted that I forgot to mention with the block too. So what you will notice is that for the pin lay rows and the weighted chin up, so your primary back movement on those days, even though like the back down percentage will be the same, so it'll still be 3 back down sets of 5 with 9% of your top set. Whereas in block 1 for the pin lay rows and the weighted chin ups on day 1 and 2, you had a top set of 5. Well, in block 2, those become top sets of 4, and then in block 3, those become top sets of 3. So once again, kind of the same concept as like on the volume days. The top set reps is getting decreased. So even though it's still 3 back down sets of 5 with 9% of your top set like it was in block 1, obviously your top set of 4 at RP6 for block 2 should be heavier than your top set of 5 was at RP6 in block 1. Then your top set of 3 at RP6 in block 3 should be heavier than what your top set of 4 was. So therefore your 3 back down sets of 5 with that is going to be heavier, more total workload than what you were doing previously. So that's the way that's going to look. And then you've got your usual secondary compound movement isolation with your accessory word after that. And then same thing on day 2. Deadlifts, top set of 1 RP6, 2 back down sets of 5 with 74% warrior max. Overhead press, top set of 1 RP6, 3 back down sets of 5 with 74% warrior max. Primary weighted pull up, like I said, block 1 was the top set of 5, block 2 is the top set of 4, and block 3 is the top set of 3 at RP6, and 3 back down sets of 5 with 9% of your top set. And then on day 3, we start off with top sets of 8s for block 1, then top sets of 7, top sets of 7 for block 2, and we're going to finish off with top sets of 6 for block 3, and then you have 2 back down sets of 10 with 90% of your top set for the variation barbell squat, and for the close grip bench press as well, and the variation weighted pull up as well, and then you have your secondary movement. So that's the way it's going to work. So pretty much, guys, by the end of this program, you're going to essentially be hitting singles at RPE 9s on week 4 on your bench, your primary barbell squat, your overhead press, and your deadlift. So with that, you're gonna your singles RPE 9s should be heavier than what your previous maxes were. So if you want to run this program again, you have 2 options. You can simply take what those singles were at RPE 9 and use those for your new percentage back down work. That's what you're going to input for like your new back down work. So those are your new maxes, quote unquote. Or if you want to go ahead and test your maxes, like after you finish running this program, like the following week, you can do that. Just come in, work up to singles and say like, what will be RP 10, so like your true maxes. To be honest, I feel like quite a few of you, instead of doing like your RP 9s for your singles, are probably going to get closer to like RP 10s to try to max out the final week of the program anyway. That's something that you can do if you so choose to. That's not how it's written out, but once again, this is the way that the program is laid out for you. Work up to singles RP9, so you're not doing like a true max where you're tapering volume and peaking and all that kind of stuff. You're simply like just coming in and getting an idea of like kind of where your like quote unquote gym max is, which a single RP9 is should be fairly close to what your non meat prepped peaked out gym max is going to be anyway. So that's how you guys keep rerunning this program if you choose to do so. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the program, guys, and that's pretty much it for the video. Like I said, I've already explained to you what the few exceptions are to movements, as far as the weighted dips, the weighted pulls need to do that. The only other exception I can think of is like if you absolutely can't or just don't want to do the dumbbell Bulgarian split squats, then you could do like dumbbell steps up instead. But I did say you want to run the program the way that it's laid out for you. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Like I said, different videos I'll kind of go over different topics, over questions you guys may have about this program, like why I set it the way it is, will be linked in the description down below. The free program itself will be in either in the description down below or in the comments section. It's 4 weeks, and it's 3 different blocks that each have 4 weeks, so it's gonna be a little bit longer, so it may not fit in the description box. So I'll put in the comments. Once again, 9 Excel sheet. That's the nice fancy Excel sheets that I use. That's something that I keep for paying clients only. But once again, this is something I want to give you guys for free to kind of build off that free beginner program. Feel free to make your own Excel sheet, file for it, or save in your notes, however you want to go about doing it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video, guys. Whew, camera stopped on me one more time, but it's actually good. I was about to say that's it for the video, but the last thing I kind of want to just briefly go over is, like I said, guys, this is an intermediate program builds off the beginner program. So once again, the focus is like balance, not like a powerlifting specific program. So you still have your overhead press, everything like that, but the same principles are kind of the same. We want balance. Like for example, on day 1, the pin lay row, like your main back move for that day is a row. So then you have a vertical pull, your lat pull down is like the secondary kind of movement, right? Whereas on day 2, the weighted chin up, a vertical pull is your main movement, and then you have the dumbbell seal row as kind of like that secondary move, which is more focused on a row. On day 1, we're focusing on the squat, and then on day 3, we're also focusing on the squat, But then with day 2, you know, we're hitting that, we've got that deadlift in, and then on day 3, you've got Romanian deadlifts in as well. So versus in the beginner program, we're really pulling like, you know, once a week. This time you are technically have like 2 deadlift variations, like your actual like, you know, primary deadlift, and then you have the like the Romanian deadlift as well. So, you know, whether your main deadlift is conventional, sumo, whatever you choose on day 2, you still come in and do that Romanian deadlift as a hip hinge on day 3 as well. And then you have the dumbbell shoulder press on day 3 as well. So you're doing like, you know, more vertical pressing, whereas in the beginner program you only had overhead press like just for the like 1 time a week. So this time you have more total vertical pressing. You've got some incline dumbbell work, so focus a little bit more on the upper pec. So it's just more, the idea is just like more volume as a whole, because you're more of an intermediate lifter and you get a little bit more volume for growth, and then more exercise selection because you can get away with doing that, and to keep the balance. And then above all, it's like, you know, that periodization, like that wave loading, which helps you since you aren't going to be able to progress, you know, linearly the same way that you were before when you're a beginner. But yeah, just kind of want to briefly address that. Now that is it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you did. If not, leave a comment down below. Let me know what I can do to get better. Like the video, share, subscribe. Keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch y'all later.